that's a bit of a sudden end. For those of you that have not been with us before, as I said, we're in the final week of this God Story series. So what we've been doing over, really since the summer, is starting in Genesis. We've been going kind of book by book. Don't worry, not done 52 weeks in it, but we've done the whole of the Bible. We started in Genesis, we went into the New Testament, we finished in Revelation, and Adrian this morning is going to finish our series by talking about how we can step into that story as well. Adrian and Julia have been with us for a number of years. Rachel and I know them well, and we are blessed by their public ministry here as well. But I want you to know that we are also so much richer for having them in our lives outside of what they do on a Sunday. This is very much just the tip of the iceberg, and they are people that have absolutely walked into God's story in so many different ways, and we're so much richer for it, and you're so much richer for it. So I hope you're excited for this morning, and please give Adrian Holloway a big round of applause.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim, for that very kind and generous welcome, and a very warm welcome to all of you. It's great to be with you. I hope you've had a great summer. We've been away, and I guess I'd just like to share, if I may, about a funny thing that happened to us while we were away over the summer. Would that be okay? So the background to this story is that 2.5 years ago, one of our daughters, Bethany, got engaged. She got engaged to be married to somebody that she'd met at her church in the student group at Nottingham University, and this is Tom, and so it's great to meet Tom, and as you can see, Tom is really quite tall. Yes, quite a tall, and I discovered very quickly that Tom is also a keen sportsman, and despite appearances to the contrary, I fancy myself as quite a good all-round sportsman. However, I've discovered since I met Tom that is actually no longer the case. So they got married, and that was all great. And just to kind of explain the situation, first of all, Tom is significantly taller than me. Now, this picture gives you a distorted view of reality, because my friend John, who is a police officer, is pushing me down to exaggerate the real height differential is not as vast as it appears in this photograph. I'm not quite as short as I look. But nevertheless, Tom is really quite good at all sports. And so basically, over the last 2.5 years, folks, I have been playing Tom at all these different sports. First of all, it was football. And football's been traditionally used to be a bit of a strength of mine. And I'm thinking, yeah, he's taller than me. Yes, he's much fitter than me. He's also much younger than me. But I'm thinking the first yard's in the head. I discovered that that's not actually true. But over the summer, I played tennis against him, I played badminton against him, I played table tennis, and suddenly I realized I've never played him at golf. And so we went to the driving range. Now, I grant you, earlier this summer, I had a disastrous episode on the driving range at Topgolf in Weybridge, where I really embarrassed myself and other family members by spraying the ball all over the place. But I just want to talk to you frankly about what happened at the Chichester driving range and just share with you. You'd expect me to be honest. I mean, seeing as I lead the church, at the very least, you'd expect honesty. Yeah? Well, I have to tell you honestly, Chichester driving range this summer was my finest ever performance off the tee. Several times I hit the ball straight on more than one occasion. And I was feeling pretty pleased with myself. Tom steps up. And you see those trees in the distance? He hits those trees. I heard the ball bounce off the back fence. I cannot find a chink in this guy's armor. And he shared with us over our summer holiday when we were away as a family group that Tom is currently training. On the holiday, he was training. He's training for a new sport. I mean, it's not really a sport. It's just sort of silliness. It's called a triathlon. Okay, so it's like, oh, look how far I can swim. Oh, I can cycle a really long way. Oh, I can run a really long way. And he explained while he was training that he's actually training for a version of this sport, which isn't really a sport. It's just sort of showing off. He explained he's a version of it that's called an Ironman. Yeah, and so he's training for an Ironman. And so this is not an exaggeration. One time we're walking along the beach. This is in East Wittering in Sussex. We're walking along the beach. Tom is in the sea. He's swimming at the same speed that we're walking. So all of us are walking. We actually stopped and we said, we're going back. And so we start walking back. He swims with us. He's swimming at the same speed that we're walking. Oh man, I cannot find a chink in this guy's armor. And so I asked him about this, ridiculous Iron Man thing. And which, as you can see, he's training for here. And he said, look, it's not actually a full Iron Man, it's a half Iron Man. Yeah, meaningless, half Iron Man. I said, how long does it take? He said, 5 or 6 hours, he says. Swim, bike, run. I said, how long is the run? He says, about 2 hours, 20 minutes. That's just the run at the end. And so, as we finish our series, it just so happens that we actually finish with a 2-hour, 20-minute journey, during which, believe it or not, Jesus tells the God story. Jesus tells the God story from the beginning to the end of the Bible. He does so on a walk. It's a 7-mile walk from Jerusalem to a place called Emmaus. And we're going to hear Jesus tell the God story to us this morning from Luke chapter 24. So we have come, as Tim mentioned, to the end of our journey. We're stepping into the story. And before we read our passage, I will just tell you our 3 points. Here are the 3 points that we're going to see in Luke 24 this morning. Our first point is going to be that when you feel disappointed, here's the good news. The risen Jesus walks with you. Even though you might not be able to recognize him in your circumstances at the moment, even though it might feel like, oh my goodness, everything's going wrong, actually, when you're downhearted, Jesus is walking with you. Our second point this morning is going to be that when you and I feel confused, actually the good news is Jesus will speak through the Bible to give you new hope. And then thirdly and finally at the end, we're going to see as Jesus breaks bread with his 2 disciples and their eyes are open, we're going to see Jesus' presence turning our sorrow into joy. Okay, are you ready to go? Yeah, okay, here we go. We'll read Luke 24 together. We're going to read from verse 13. Now, that same day, this is actually the same day that Jesus rose from the dead. This is the first Easter Sunday. Now, that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one, that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what's more, it's the 3rd day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us they'd seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus." He said to them, "How foolish you are and how slow to believe. All the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets," this is Jesus telling the God story, "and beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he was going further, but they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it's nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11, so this is 11 of the 12 original disciples, and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and appeared to Simon," that is Simon Peter. Then the two told him what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. Wow. So we picture the scene usually something like this. Here are these two dejected, downcast, disappointed disciples. They're leaving Jerusalem. They're trudging towards Emmaus. All their hopes are in tatters. They thought that Jesus was going to be the one to redeem Israel, but turns out actually he's not the Jewish Messiah after all. How do we know that? Because he got killed by the Romans. The very people he was supposed to destroy killed him. So they're down on the floor. And we usually think that Cleopas' companion, who's not named, we usually think that he was a male disciple. Actually, some of the scholars think it might have been Cleopas' wife. But what we know is that Jesus joins these two disciples. And Jesus walks with them and talks to them, and Jesus tells them the God story. And isn't this encouraging to think? First up, Jesus comes into our disappointment. Jesus comes into those moments where we're downcast and dejected, and our hopes are on the floor. I wonder what it was that caused us to get disappointed. Or maybe it's obvious. I went for the online interviews. I got to the third round. I went for the in-person interview, but I didn't get the job. So we're disappointed, obviously. Maybe we didn't get the house. We put in the offer, we got outbid, we didn't get the house. Or actually, we did get the flat that we wanted. Turns out it's got damp. Maybe it was the car that broke down. Maybe it was the marriage that broke down. Or maybe this was in church. Maybe you put your trust in a Christian leader in a church, this church, some other church, and that relationship broke down. It didn't work out. And so we're down in the dumps. We're feeling disappointed. But the good news is, in those moments, the risen Jesus comes alongside us. Even if we can't recognize him in our circumstances, we cannot see Jesus in what's happening at the moment. Nothing about what's happening in my life looks like God's plan. Jesus is apparently absent. No. On the road to Emmaus, Jesus is with them. Sometimes, folks, we want a miracle. Jesus gives us a Bible study. That's what these guys needed. They'd actually seen miracles before, but what they needed was the Bible study. Jesus walks with you. So when you feel confused, secondly, in our passage we see Jesus will speak through the Bible and will give us new hope. I remember when I left university, I lived for a year. I was doing a postgraduate year living in Cardiff, and I lived in this house. And there was one day in, I think it was September, maybe early October, in 1991. That's how long ago it was. And actually, it was just like any other day. I mean, I was sitting on my bed. I was reading the Bible. I was actually reading a psalm that I'd read before. In fact, I was even reading a verse that I'd read before. Oh, my goodness. Psalm 34, verse 10. Even the lions grow hungry and weak, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Even the lions grow hungry and weak, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. I tell you, I got 3 years of momentum and go forward out of that promise. I mean, this situation I've been in for a long time was unresolved. And I was sitting on my bed feeling a little bit sorry for myself. And all of a sudden, I got hold of that verse, or that verse got a hold of me, and there was no miracle. I came out of my room, nothing had changed. I just walked into a room, read a book, walked out. Oh, but my life had changed. Why? Because Jesus speaks to us today through the Bible. Psalm 34, verse 10, changed my life. This is what's happening in our story. Jesus speaks to these guys through the Bible. And what's happened is that they have got a fixed understanding of the Bible, of the job description, of the profile of the Jewish Messiah, and they don't think Jesus of Nazareth fits that profile. That's why they're disappointed. What's going to happen is that Jesus is going to show them actually they've misunderstood the Bible. They actually have got the wrong description, the wrong profile of the Jewish Messiah. So he's going to show them what all the scriptures say, and going to show them actually Jesus of Nazareth fits the profile. So, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them that actually the Messiah had to suffer. Now, you and I might wonder, hang on a minute, how had these people in the first century misunderstood the profile of the Messiah? Well, we know quite a lot about this. One thing they fastened on to was 2 Samuel chapter 7, which is an amazing passage where Nathan, the prophet, is prophesying to King David. So this is about 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. He's saying, God is saying through Nathan to David, hey, David, one day in the future, your descendants will rule and reign on the throne in Israel. You will have one of your physical descendants, a descendant of yours, ruling on the throne. Now, why did they fasten onto that promise? Because, oh my goodness, there have been so much disaster that's befallen these people since this promise was made. First of all, in the 8th century BC, the Assyrians invade from the north. Of the 12 tribes of Israel, 10 are carted off into captivity by Assyria. Then in the 6th century BC, the Babylonians invade. There's only actually 2 tribes left. That's Judah. They smash the temple. Another disaster. And then worse follows. In 167 BC, this Greek ruler, Antiochus Epiphanes, comes into the temple in Jerusalem and sets up an altar to the Greek god Zeus in the temple in Jerusalem. And that was the abomination that causes desolation. Let the reader understand. That was the worst thing. Antiochus Epiphanes slaughtered pigs in the temple in Jerusalem. This is a disaster. And then to cap it all, more recently, in 63 BC, Pompey Magnus, this Roman warlord, this guy's a contemporary of Julius Caesar and sometime actually opponent of Julius Caesar. He comes in, he sweeps in, and he enters the Holy of Holies. Holy of Holies, only the high priest is allowed to go there once a year. Pompey Magnus swans in, walks in. He goes behind the veil into the presence of God. Pompey Magnus just has a look round, walks out. This is a catastrophe for these people. And so they clung on to the idea, 2 Samuel says one day, one of the descendants of David will be back on the throne. And so they longed for the Messiah to come. They held on to verses like this in Psalm 2. Psalm 2 was a big thing. Reading the language, understanding it militarily. There's David prophesying one day, one of the Messiah will come, and there'll be this great victory. There's a war between the nations, but it doesn't matter because Israel's God will triumph. And this messianic figure will come in the future. A messianic figure who will destroy the enemies of God and, in their understanding, throw off the Romans. And after this great victory, then the messianic kingdom will begin. They read about that in Isaiah 9 and 11. And there's the Messiah. He's won his victories, ruling and reigning. At peace is broken out. Everything's wonderful. So it's basically from glory to glory, one thing after another, bigger, better, faster, stronger. This messianic figure, he's like the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And they loved it. That's what they're looking for. This is who they thought Jesus was going to be. But, actually, Jesus isn't the Jewish Messiah. How do we know that? Well, he got crucified by the very Romans he was supposed to defeat. Are we living in the Messianic age? No, it's same old, he got killed. Let's just have a look at this worldview for a moment. Here's Peter expressing it really clearly. This is cycling back to Matthew chapter 16, where we read, "From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life." Look at Peter's reaction to this news. Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke Jesus. "Never, Lord," he said. "This will never happen to you, because you are the Messiah. You are never going to get killed. I've only got one category for a Messiah, and that he doesn't get killed. Maybe you are the Messiah, and I believe you are, which means you're not going to get killed. But if you do get killed in Jerusalem, that means you're not the Messiah. I'm not having that." So he rebukes Jesus. He's so attached to this worldview, he rebukes Jesus because he doesn't fit their understanding. "Never, Lord. You're never going to get killed. You're the one." And so Cleopas and his companion have bought into this same worldview. They're on the same ticket. They cannot compute a Messiah who gets killed. And so Jesus is going to come along and say, look, if you look at all the scriptures, you'll see, didn't the Messiah have to suffer these things? And so he does the Bible study and points out how they got the wrong profile. They got the wrong job description. They misunderstood the Bible. And actually, Jesus wasn't a messianic miss. Jesus is going to show them that Jesus of Nazareth was a messianic hit. He ticks all the boxes. He was indeed the Jewish Messiah. For example, we don't actually know where he started, but let's imagine he started with Genesis 3:15. We know he began with Moses. That's the first 5 books of the Bible. And here's a promise in Genesis 3:15. They would have loved this. They would have said, yeah, this is the bit where the Messiah crushes Satan's head. We love that verse. And Jesus might have said, yeah, but look at the end of the verse. In the process of winning this great victory, the Messiah's heel is struck. I think you missed that bit in your rah-rah. Yeah, you missed this bit, the suffering bit. And do you know what? In 1968, epic archaeology indeed, in Jerusalem, in an ossuary, in a bone box. This is the outside of the bone box you can see there at the bottom. Inside that bone box, we found the heel of Jehohanan, a 24 to 28-year-old Jewish first-century man who was, as you can see, indeed crucified through the heel. Now, this is an amazing illustration of Genesis 3:15. We don't know that Jesus was crucified with the nail through the heel, but we do know that the Greek word the New Testament uses for foot, because the New Testament says that Jesus had the nail driven through his feet. That word can mean heel, incorporates the heel as well. And so it wasn't just glory and victory. There was a cost. There was an element of suffering. Can you see it here? This is what crucifixion looked like in the first century. Hey guys, didn't the Messiah have to suffer these things? If you read the whole Bible, do you not see? For example, maybe he took them to Genesis 22:13. There we are on Mount Moriah. Maybe Jesus said, when Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac, do you remember the story? Actually, a ram that was stuck in the thicket, that ram was crucified. The ram was slain on Mount Moriah. Guys, he might have said, that's the same hill. That's the same place where Jesus of Nazareth was. This is Jerusalem. This is going to be Jerusalem. Mount Moriah is the same place where the temple was eventually built. And so, yes, there was suffering on the Mount Moriah. Maybe Jesus took them to Exodus 12 and said, guys, you're on about how the Messiah is going to redeem Israel. Well, it's not just physical liberation. There's redemption from sin. What about that? Don't you remember that when the angel of death passed over, this is all to do with the blood of the Lamb. Why was it necessary for those guys, these Hebrews, to paste the blood of the Lamb over the door? Because sin leads to death. The punishment for sin is death. So to avoid the death penalty, they had to put the blood of the lamb. Jesus might have said, Jesus of Nazareth was the Lamb of God who was slain for the sins of the world. Maybe he took them to Leviticus 16 and said, hey, do you remember the scapegoat on the Day of Atonement? Yes, there'll be a sacrifice in the temple, but the scapegoat carries the sins of the people out of the city. Don't you remember Jesus of Nazareth was taken out of the city? Outside the city walls. He was crucified outside the city walls, carrying the sins of the people, a scapegoat in your place. Maybe he took these disciples, Cleopas and his companion, to Psalm 22, a great psalm of David. But it's not just a psalm of victory, it's a psalm of great sorrow. In fact, Jesus quoted this psalm from the cross. He's literally nailed to the cross, quoting out loud Psalm 22, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? There's suffering involved in the God story that Jesus tells. I'm sure he took them through the suffering servant in Isaiah 52 and Isaiah 53. Folks, this reads to us like an eyewitness account of the crucifixion of Jesus, but it was written 700 years beforehand. It's an extraordinary passage. I preached a whole sermon on this last year, and I'm sure Jesus would have taken Cleopas and his companion through the sufferings of the suffering servants and identified the suffering servant with the Jewish Messiah. Maybe as he's finishing up on the prophets, remember he took them through Moses and the prophets, he landed on Zechariah 12:10. This is, I think, the most amazing one of all. This is now the 6th century BC. And here's Zechariah. This is at the time they're rebuilding the temple after the latest disaster. And Zechariah is prophesying. He's speaking the words of God. So this is God speaking. And God says, they will look on me, the one they have pierced. What? Sorry, what? God is going to be pierced, and they will mourn for him. What? Sorry, we're going to mourn for God? God's going to die? What, Zechariah? Yes! Jesus says to these disciples, that's exactly right. This is what happened on the cross. Jesus was pierced. To prove that he was dead, the Roman soldiers got a spear and they brought it up into his side before they took his body down from the cross, and they mourned for him. There are 322 Old Testament prophecies in the Old Testament about Jesus. Maybe Jesus spun through 16. He said, look, here's the profile of the Messiah. He needs to be born of a virgin, born in Bethlehem, descended from the tribe of Judah. His ministry is going to begin in Galilee. He's going to work miracles. He's going to enter Jerusalem on a donkey. He's going to be betrayed by a friend. He'll be sold for 30 pieces of silver. Hey, Cleopas, the Messiah needs to be wounded and bruised. Cleopas' hands and feet need to be pierced. Cleopas is going to be crucified with thieves. His garments will be torn and they'll cast lots for them. Cleopas' bones won't be broken, but his side will be pierced. He'll be buried in a rich man's tomb. But oh, Cleopas, don't you remember what you said? You said that this morning some of the women went to the tomb and found that it was empty. They saw angels who said, he's not here, he has risen. That's because Jesus is alive. He's going to rise from the dead. And so I think he went through all of these and said, okay, let's just work it out. Here's the profile. Question: does Jesus of Nazareth fit the profile of the Jewish Messiah? Was he born of a virgin? Yes, he was. Was he born in Bethlehem? Oh, yes, he was. Was he born of the tribe of Judah? Yes, he was. His ministry began, Cleopas, in Capernaum and Cana. That's in Galilee. He worked miracles. He entered Jerusalem on a donkey. Cleopas, only a week ago, on Palm Sunday, don't you remember? He came in through that gate, through into the center of Jerusalem on a donkey. Oh, Cleopas, he was betrayed by Judas. And Judas received 30 pieces of silver for his betrayal. Jesus was wounded and bruised. His hands and feet were pierced. And do you remember Cleopas? He was crucified in between two thieves. And whilst he was on the cross, his garments were torn. The Roman soldiers cast lots for his clothing. Oh, Cleopas's bones weren't broken, but his side was pierced, and he was buried in Joseph of Arimathea's tomb, in a rich man's tomb. But here's the good news. He has risen from the dead. Oh, he's the one. He's the only one who could ever have fitted this description. In fact, if he'd gone to the book of Daniel, he could have been able to show that it would have to have been then. It couldn't be any time beforehand or later. It has to be now. It has to be this window of time. It has to be Jesus. No one else fulfilled all of these prophecies. And so, as we finish up our sermon series, stepping into the story, I hope at the end of it, you will see there is hope for you and there is hope for me. That when we feel disappointed, Jesus comes in and says, I'm with you. Never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. And that when we feel confused, Jesus will speak through the Bible to give you new hope. And right now, there's this phenomenon going on. I mean, wherever you are, you can listen to the Bible. There's an app, the YouVersion app, and there's now nearly 1 billion people who've downloaded this Bible app on their phone. So if you're thinking, yeah, if I start reading the Bible, isn't that a bit weird? No, there's 1 billion people doing the same thing. And so you can walk around Farnborough listening to David Suchet, Hercule Poirot, reading the Bible to you. You can listen to it, you can read it, whatever translation you want. Well, there's so many different options and plans and schemes. It's so easy these days to access the Word of God, to have Jesus speaking the truth of God through the Bible, bringing you new hope. And finally, we see in our story Jesus' presence turning our sorrow into joy. And this is the moment, folks, when Jesus sits with these two and he breaks the bread. And in that moment, they recognize him. Oh, it's so amazing. They recognize who he is. And so at the end of our series, there's a moment in time, isn't there, where we come to Jesus. Maybe that's happened to you. This happened to me back in 1985. I didn't go to church. I didn't actually know anyone who went to church. But someone invited me to Wimbledon Baptist Church. I'm really excited that I hope later this month I'll be able to introduce this person to you. But this was massive for me. So I was invited in, and I went every Sunday for 9 months to the evening service. And eventually, on the 14th of April, 1985, I gave my life over to following Christ. And so, you're somewhere when this happens. I was 16. I was at school. So, of course, I worked it out at school. And so the school I was at was a bit of an unusual school, to say the least. It was also an unusual experience at school because my dad was the headmaster of the junior school. It was a fee-paying school, and because he got half fees, that's how come my parents could allow me to go. And so all sorts of funny things. I'll tell you about a couple of funny things that happened at school. I remember walking along the road. This is in Wimbledon, in southwest London. Walking along the road, and my friend Richard Symes has got a French exchange student with him. And so this kid can't speak any English. And we can't speak French. Me and Richard Symes can't speak French. But as we're walking along the road, somehow we worked out that this kid knew Latin. Well, of course, we knew Latin. So I remember walking along the road I actually asked this guy in the 1980s in Wimbledon, walking along the street in London, ubi habitas in Gallia? Where do you live in France? So I'm having a conversation in Latin in London with this kid. And then I remember asking him, sororibus habes? Do you have any sisters? So this is the sort of school that I went to. I remember we had several of our teachers that actually fought in the Second World War. This is back in the 80s. And there was this one teacher called Bugsy. Mr. Warburg. And Bugsy had been, in his heyday, as a young man, he had been the real tennis champion of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So Bugsy had amazing hand-eye coordination. And so Bugsy would be, let's say it's maths. So Bugsy taught me maths, and I'd be on the back row. Maybe I'm talking to my mate, which I shouldn't be doing. And Bugsy would be there at the board. And this is like blackboard and chalk, yeah? So he's writing chalk on the blackboard, but if he can hear somewhere in the room conversation, which shouldn't be happening, Bugsy was so well trained that he was able to pivot on his left foot and chuck the chalk straight at the person. And so it was so exciting because you'd be there, it's boring maths, you're talking to your mate, and suddenly this piece of chalk goes flying past your ear. And so Bugsy explained, here's the principle. First offense, you get the chalk. Second offense, you get the board rubber. Oh, yeah. And it was so exciting to think, any minute now, it's boring for us, any minute now, this wooden object will be flying. It was so accurate. Bugsy was absolutely dead-eye. And so you were on your toes. It was an exhilarating atmosphere to be in. This was the situation I was in when I first stepped into the God story. I never thought I'd be part of this story. I never thought I'd ever want to go to church. If you told me I'd end up wanting to go to church, I would have thought, no, you got the wrong person. That's not me. But somebody invited me into the God story. And here I am, because somebody invited me in. And there was 120 boys in our year. And next day, after I became a Christian, I prayed the following day. And I was praying for an opportunity to speak to a particular person. And it actually happened that day. I was able to share the God story with that one particular person. And then I pray again. I'd kneel by the end of my bed before I went to school, pray for an opportunity, and I'd always name a particular person. And then I would be able to speak to that person that day. And it went on every day for 2 years. And some of those boys became Christians. And at the end, out of the 120 during those 2 years, 20 had become Christians. 20 were following Christ. And I gathered them in the school hall a few years ago. This is me with my contemporaries. So everyone in this photograph is now aged 56, okay? This is me with my... Not all of these people have all become Christians, but several of them have. Where's God placed you? Where's God placed you? Right now I live here. I'm making friends with some other guys my age and playing football with them, seeking to share the God story with them. Maybe the band would like to come and join me. And as they come up, I want to invite you to seize the moment as we step into the God story. This is not just something we spectate and listen to and think, yeah, that was good, and then we're on to the next thing. No, the truth of the matter is that God created the universe with you in mind, that he sent his son Jesus for you, that Jesus went to the cross for you because God loves you. And now God's plan for you is to do what these disciples were told to do. They were told to go into all the world. That's the next step. To go into all the world and share the good news with every creature, with everyone. That every tribe and every language and every nation and every people group would be able to access the God story. That they could be invited in. Hey guys, I stand before you this morning. I needed someone to invite me into the God story. I was not going to be going to church. That going to church was not on my agenda. I needed somebody to invite me in. I'm so glad they did. Because now I know God. Now all my sins are forgiven. Oh, wouldn't it be amazing for that friend you're thinking of now, that family member you're thinking of now, to be invited into this God story. We've been passing this baton between us. And at the end of our series, this baton is passed amongst us. In exactly 3 months today, we will be having our carol services. Last year, we had 500 people attend our 2 carol services. So that's 300 people who normally come here on a Sunday. 200 guests came last year. 200 guests. And so we were full. And so this year, because we're already full at 2 services, we'll have 3 carol services. You're not going to be inviting anyone to a carol service in September, but you and I can think now, who could I invite? Who would I love to invite into the God story? Who would I love to be here hearing the good news about Jesus? So the first thing for us has got to be that we make sure we're here. Whatever else happens, there's always going to be Sundays you can't be here. But what about this Sunday, the 7th of December? Let's just make sure I'm definitely going to be around, because if I'm here, there's a chance God could use me to invite somebody else. Should we stand together? Maybe you can imagine with me now, your friend in this room. I remember having conversations in this room a year ago, people saying to me, for several years I've wanted to go to a carol service. This year somebody invited me. I'm so glad I'm here. Maybe you can imagine your friend not just in this room, but standing where I'm standing now, sharing their story about how they've become a Christian. Maybe you can imagine your friend walking down into our baptistry and being baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Oh, Father, thank you that you stooped down into our world and died for the likes of us. Thank you that you came near to us through Jesus Christ. Thank you that you gave your life on the cross. And thank you that now you send us as your messengers to take this God story, to take this baton to our friends. Maybe in the presence of God, you might just want to think of a man or a woman of peace in your life, somebody you know, maybe someone who doesn't know Jesus yet, somebody who you could invite along. Maybe you want to spend some time with them in September, October, November, knowing that you could invite them to our carols. Maybe you want to imagine them here on a Sunday on the 7th of December. Maybe in 2026, they're standing here sharing their story of how they met Jesus through going on our Alpha course. Maybe you want to imagine them being immersed in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and leading their friends and family into the God story. Let's worship.
Hey guys, before you go, we just want to say a massive thank you for watching this video today. My name's Chris. I'm part of the leadership team here at the Beacon Church. You know, as a church, we have a big vision. We believe that we exist to help people to know God, to find freedom, to discover their purpose, and to make a difference. If this video has made a difference in your life today, then make sure you check out our other content in our playlist. We believe it's going to really help you out. And don't forget to like and subscribe as you go. Well, that's all from me today. Take care. God bless.